Hi.
Hi.
We're just going to nonsense here until LinkedIn lets us go live.
All right. We'll just hang out.
Cool. This is what I love about this technology, you know?
Is it not doing it again?
Yeah.
Great.
But there is usually a delay. There we go. Okay.
We're here. Yes, 100%?
See.
See. All right, everybody, welcome to Leadership Radar. I'm Rachel Lee, COO and Executive Coach, and our founder, Darren Canthal. And we are here today to talk about what we're calling the home field advantage. Essentially, it's the merging of home life and leadership life and how they impact each other. Yet many times when we're coaching individuals or we're even talking to individuals that are leaders or executives, they say, I would never talk to my executive coach about my personal life, which we think is a little bit of a miss, but to each his own. So we're going to break down what it looks like when your home life is impacting your leadership. We're going to talk about your leadership bogeys, the emotional impact, candid communication, clear agreements, Darren and I's unique coming together when we are elevated, the same team philosophy, and the recovery plan. So if there is tension or friction, what's the plan to repair? And this is across the board in all of your relationships. So before we dive in, dad joke.
Okay.
Hit it.
You know this joke.
Great.
It's pushing the envelope a little bit. It's adult content for adult programming.
Oh, I think I should approve these before you do them.
Well, I'm not on social media, so I'm not getting my full array of jokes all the time. I'm not sifting through, so I'm going back into the old archives here a little bit.
Okay, let me ask you, is this like, are we going to get banned? Are we going to put LinkedIn in jail with this one?
I don't think so.
All right, everybody, hold on.
All right. Did you hear about the new drug for erectile dysfunction?
Nope. You can't say this one.
It's called mycoxaflopin.
You can't. All right.
Come on, that's a good one.
I'm not saying
Like
it's not a good one. I'm just saying that maybe we need to have a team meeting and reevaluate our jokes. That's not a dad joke.
It is a dad joke.
No, it's not.
Fine.
Fine. You're officially on a PIP.
Know your audience.
I'll give you a formal warning or whatever later today.
Brad, let me know. Do you actually like that joke? Do you like that? Is it a good joke?
Are you talking to me or are you talking to the people who are watching us?
Our buddy Frederick Van Riper's watching.
Oh.
He's giving us a little bit of prompts about the joke.
Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Well, we're waiting to see.
It makes sense that he's actually watching, right? Because of the work that he does, which I think is so important. So anybody, not anybody, his work is grounded in the fair play philosophy by Eve Rodsky. And he specifically addresses dads or partners at home and how they're showing up for their family and for their wife or their partner or their spouse, and bringing more equality into the home so your relationship is better. Which, bravo, hats off. I'm like cheering him on all the way.
Yes.
All right, let's dive in here. So, home life impacts leadership, vice versa. Okay. So, how have you seen that? I want to know specifically for you. Tell our listeners how it's played out for you in our relationship, or maybe even your previous marriage or relationships. That's
all right. Well, let me preface what I'm going to say with one of the spiels I give my new clients is that I am not a fan or a believer in check your emotions at the door. The thing I always say to people, and I'll say it as if I'm speaking to you, like you're my client. What I say is, it doesn't matter where you are. You are always a mom, a partner, a business owner, a coach, a mountain biker, a daughter, a sibling. Like you're always those roles every single day, all day. Now, certainly depending on where you are, one role may take precedence or may take, center stage, but to suffice it to say, you're always all of those roles. And if one part of your life is out of harmony, and very specifically when partners fight and are in an argument, it's pretty hard, in my opinion, just to turn that shit off and go to work and pretend like everything's hunky-dory. Maybe said another way is when, again, speaking about us personally, when we are not fighting, when we are acting as our best, when we're in good terms and all those things, like life is just better and easier. My brain is clear. I'm not spending energy thinking about how I'm annoyed, how I'm going to approach the thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now to make it personal or not personal, to make it more poignant about our discussion today is you have specific stories where people literally said to you, I'm not talking to my coach about my marriage or my parenthood. And I haven't had anyone say that to me directly. However, just recently, I had a client that literally between today's meeting and our next meeting, he and his partner decided they were going to get divorced. And when I saw him on that next meeting and said, hey, how you doing? What do you want to coach on today? He did not mention that they had come to this life-changing decision. And as we were talking, whatever came up for whatever reason, I asked him, what did you and your wife decide? And then he told me. And then, like so many people do, he talked about it for a hot second and then went directly back to the tangible thing we were working on, which is his job search. So I don't think I answered your question, but I felt like that was important.
Well, yeah, I think you teed up the conversation really well, and you gave a real life experience. And what we're not here to do is say that we are life coaches that are gonna help you in your relationship, and that you must talk to your leadership or executive coach about your personal life. What we're here to say is that the two affect each other, and why wouldn't you? You have access to a professional coach, right? Which is the whole point of coaching, is to move you forward. So why wouldn't you utilize that? Now, maybe I would like to dig into that. Maybe there's some fear of like, well, that doesn't apply to work, and I don't want my manager to know or my CEO to know. Which, by the way, if you are working with a coach and you ever feel like the conversations are being shared, you need to run, because that is fundamentally 100% unethical. Coaching stays with coaching. But if you're feeling that way, that's what we're saying. It's okay. And there is a benefit to bringing all things to the table that are creating stress or disharmony or distraction in your life. So that way you can be the best leader. And ultimately, I'm not even sure that that's deep enough. Ultimately, you want life to be easier. Like you said, there's harmony. We're operating at our best when we're good. There's lots of laughter, collaboration, connection. Like it's the flow. The business is running. Don't we all want that? So that's what we're saying here, right? So whether you bring it or you don't, we're just showing you the tie and the thread as we talk about this. So one of the things here on our leadership bogeys are the emotional impact. So I know when you and I are fighting, right, and we're not in harmony, for me, it's very sad. I feel depressed. I don't feel like working. I'm not creative. I'm not eating, which I need to eat to fuel my brain. Otherwise, I'm useless. I don't want to connect with you and share a win or say, let's collaborate on this really tough problem we're trying to solve. So, and it just sucks. I mean, it's like there's no other way to say it. And it's like, and I don't want life to suck. Like, that's not why I got divorced and, partnered with you, is just to go through all the suck again. Like, doesn't make sense to me. It's my do-over. So emotional impact. Okay. When home follows you to the office and office follows you home. What have you seen?
Well, for me personally, the other thing I was thinking about you is when we're not at our best or we're fighting, is you retreat.
Oh, yes. Good
And you,
one.
and you said just a moment ago that you don't want to connect, which is the same as the retreating that you do.
Yes.
Um, when I'm at my worst, I have my own sense of retreating, which is more of checking out. Like I don't engage, I don't want to talk, I'm not interested. I'm pretty short, I'm irritable, I'm impatient. And when we're in the throes of a fight, I'm aggressive. I'm very
Yeah.
pointed. I curse way more than I normally do. It's like, there's probably more curse words in a sentence than not, or other words that are not curses. And I get mean. And the meanness is that my expectations haven't been met, at least in my brain, they haven't, which also leads us into decisions, explicit and implicit agreements, which I know we're going to talk about. But ultimately for me is I feel like an expectation hasn't been met. And then it's like, I have to prove to you that you did this thing to me, which is certainly a victim mentality. And just like you, I don't want to connect. Making a different point, which is I really like that you use the word distraction. And I think that's actually the perfect word because I think about, this is my workspace, right? I'm standing here talking to you, and I also stand here and talk to all my clients. And when you and I are in a real fight, not just a little disagreement, I always call it a buzz, right? My brain is buzzing. Like I'm present with my client, but there's that buzz of my fill in the blank with you, frustration, irritability, whatever. And it's a distraction. And then the distraction takes me away from full presence. Listen, I'm human. I'm sure I project in certain ways, right? I'm influenced by this annoyance of you that then probably comes out my mouth in certain ways of, maybe a little bit more rebellion or feistiness. And then as I'm coaching clients, my guess is certain questions or quips or whatever might lead towards that frustration. The last thing
Mhm.
I'll say is when I'm in these negative minds, when I'm in these negative headspaces, I am not able to call upon my fullest creativity, my fullest empathy. I'm not able to, get frustrated and then come off of the frustration as quick as I can when I'm not. Right. I get heated quick sometimes. Right. Like I want things done super fast. And when I'm annoyed with you and we're fighting, like I just stay up there. I'm elevated almost 24/7, so to speak. When we're not fighting, sure, I can get elevated, but I can come down pretty quick. I don't have that capability when we're fighting. And then the last thing I'll say, I know I dominated here for the last 2 minutes, is I do see this with my clients, is that when they come to a meeting, it's evident if they're heightened. And that's my word, heightened, elevated, frustrated, annoyed, angry, whatever the emotion is for that person. And whether or not they tell me they're having a fight with their spouse, which happens sometimes and not other times, it's clear that they're heightened and in their cadence of speech, in the way they're talking about their colleagues or coworkers or direct reports, also has that same level of heightenedness.
Mhm. No, I think that those are all great points. And the correlation I'm seeing that we know, not that I'm seeing, that we know is you can't just shut that off. Some people are better at compartmentalizing than others. But I have had people say to me, clients say to me, like, I can 100% shut off what's going on at home and I just go to work and I'm totally fine. And I call complete and utter bullshit. That is called avoidance. That is called suppressing. And there is a time and a place, right? You and I both know, also know people who, like, their emotions are on their sleeves, their emotions are unchecked, they're unregulated. That's not what we're talking about. Okay. So we're not talking about like you should just express all your emotions anytime. And at the same point, completely stuffing them is very unhealthy too. So it is impacting, your emotions are impacting your leadership. And even if you're not expressing them, You have an energy about you. No way to escape that. And emotions are truth, and emotions are energy. So even if you're stuffing them down and they're not up here cognitively, they are in your body. Everybody knows that you've been walking down the street, the guy at the gym, right? He's got, you know who I'm talking about?
No.
Throws the ball and he
Oh,
throws
yeah,
his
yeah,
phone
yeah,
and he's
yeah,
walking around and he's
yeah.
like, "Bruh, bruh." He's got this energy about him, but we haven't said anything, like nothing. We just feel it. If you're a leader, your team is feeling it. Your coworkers are feeling it. Everybody's feeling it. So they're going with you to work, those emotions, and they're coming back at home. Everybody's feeling it. You're thinking you're stuffing it. You're thinking you're living in a silo. You're not. At least it's like, so what we're saying is use your coach to help you work through some of these other areas that you want to grow in. Okay. Anything else on the emotional impact?
Yeah,
I want
before
to
you,
say this as well, though. Hold on, I'm going to
yeah,
interrupt. Right, because also me being the functional nutrition therapist and understanding the implications of stress on the body is when you're not addressing these emotions, it's energy that's stuck, or it's an emotion that's creating a chemical in your body, usually negative if it's a negative emotion, and that is having a cascade effect in your body, like the blood sugar imbalance, inflammatory markers, slowed digestion, slowed blood or increased blood flow, but not where you want it to be, right? It's not going to your brain, it's going to your muscles. And then we start to see health implications. In case in point, 2 months ago, I had a woman say to me, I think I've spent so much of my life suppressing my emotions that is what caused my autoimmune condition. And I see it over and over and over and over again. So it will have more than just a leadership impact. It'll have a health impact as well.
all right, two things. First, you said a moment ago, emotions are truth.
Yes.
Explain that, please.
They're a fact. They're a truth. Sometimes I feel like people will make excuses for them or try to make them an inconvenience or downplay them. And I think if we acknowledge them that they are truth and that they're not a problem, and in fact, they have immense wisdom for us if we're willing to actually look at them and feel them and acknowledge them. So that's what I mean is like sometimes I see people, the non-acknowledgement, or I don't need to talk to my executive coach about it, right? That stays here, that stays there. No, all emotions are truth. They are all facts. And then whatever we think about them, right, our perspective around them is how we will then show up and operate, or what we'll do or not do with them.
Yeah, I always talk about it in that, well, I don't necessarily say this, but my emotions are my truth. And what I often say to people, especially when we do 360s or when someone gives feedback and says, I am blank, hurt, upset, disappointed, happy, angry, irritable, whatever, is even if you want to argue with me about them, you cannot have any meaningful point because I feel the thing, period. So just a different way of saying it, but I agree. Emotions are our truth.
Yes.
Second point I want to make, and then I'm going to ask us to segue to the agreements.
Yes.
Okay. So I can. So many leaders talk about how leadership and parenting are like the same thing.
That's what I was thinking before we got on here.
Right?
It's like having kids.
Yes.
Yes,
Now,
not in a derogatory negative way,
no,
okay?
no. Any leader watching this knows exactly what we're talking about if they were also a parent. It's the clarity of speech. It's having clear expectations and agreement and buy-in and understanding. Same thing. And if certain measures aren't met, there is a consequence, right? You put me on a PIP earlier. Like that's what a lot of leaders will do when they have underperforming employees, right? So it's important to talk about how leadership and parenting have such commonalities, which is the blending of home and office. Here's the segue to the agreements that I want to make, which is, and I got to see if I can articulate this well because my brain's all over the place. One aspect, which is not so much agreement, which is overworking. Some people overwork because they want to avoid home.
Oh my God. Yes.
2, some of our clients whom don't have great agreements or don't lean into explicit agreements with their spouses, their partners, and their children, I also see that show up in their leadership. There are so many unspoken rules or a lack of clarity or not getting buy-in. There is this, I told Rachel to do this thing. And my question is usually, well, did you ask Rachel if she understood what you said? It was clear as day. Well, did you clarify? Ultimately, no, they didn't. Which I would then suspect that the same thing happens at home. Which comes back to, which comes back to why it's so important that when anyone listening, you have a coach, everything is on the table. There is carryover to all aspects of life.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest point that we're trying to make here is that if you are really willing to look at yourself, you will find correlation across the board in all areas of your life, meaning how you perceive things, how you communicate, how you set standards and boundaries, how you resolve conflict, how you fight. Right? I don't know that I've ever actually seen a complete separation of a person in their home life and at work. Because your skills and your tools are in your bag and they go with you everywhere that you go. So you want to talk about clear agreements. Okay, stop assuming, start agreeing.
Stop assuming, start agreeing. There's something I want to share real quick, and I'm not going to give great context because it's personal for the two of us. And I thought this was really telling a couple weeks back, maybe it was a month ago now. So for those listening, Rachel and I had some rocky moments of 2024, and a lot of it was how we integrated into our business, and then certainly how it impacted our home life. And at least what I realized was you had an implicit agreement with yourself about what you were or unwilling to do. And I had an implicit agreement with myself of what I expected you to do. And we never fully agreed explicitly on what those agreements were. So, and I can only speak for myself, the more that my implicit expectation of you was not met, the more and more I got incensed, if I said that correctly. I was so angry with you. And then there was no recovery, right? We stayed in this heightened sense for far too long, I'm embarrassed to say. My actions were certainly not becoming, but all because we didn't have an explicit agreement.
Yeah, I believe the words I said were, you're holding me to a set of standards that I never agreed to.
And you were holding yourself to a set of standards that I never agreed to. That's what I mean. We both had implicit agreements.
Yes. Yes. And I think that is so common among friends, among coworkers and teams and partners and kids, because we just didn't put it together. And I think the reason why we didn't put it together more quickly is because we were hijacked in our emotions. Okay, so when you are in your emotions, you're not thinking with your cognitive prefrontal cortex, like critical thinking brain, right? You're in that, at least for me, I was like a little bit of a fight, but then a lot of F you. There was no freeze. There was one or the other. And that's where distraction, that's where I was focused. I wasn't focused on slowing it down, diffusing my emotions, like processing them through and sitting down and saying, okay, we are not, which we're going to talk about same team philosophy. We are not same teaming here. Something is clearly wrong, but we were being stubborn. And really, it slowed our business down exponentially. But the lesson from it, right, the sage perspective is the amount of learning about each other that had to occur prior or in concurrent with us combining our businesses. So thinking about, like, we took two very established businesses and brought them together. I'm thinking about, I have a friend who leads a team and she has to work with another team. They have to come together and bridge to complete a project. That right there is exactly what you and I had experienced personally within our businesses. Is how do you have those clear agreements that everybody understands explicitly and everybody agrees to? That takes time. But that if you're not doing that at home and you're not practicing it at home, you're probably not practicing it at work.
Yeah, there's three things coming up. You mentioned the same team, so I'll leave that for the end. One is, I read this book and I forgot what it's called. It was referred to me by Kirk Wilson, who is the chief of police at Lone Tree. Hello, Kirk, if you're watching. I think it was called maybe the Art of Happiness or something. And it talked about, and I have a post-it on my monitor. It says, "Is your heart at war or is your heart at peace?" And unfortunately, for a lot of those weeks and months, maybe in 24, my heart was at war with you, which is so upsetting to even say out loud. And what I forgot is that we both are and were on the same team. But I was fighting with you and didn't treat you as we were on the same team. So just to talk about the same team, this is literally something Rachel and I say to each other, that sometimes when there it is, right? Mine says samesies.
Yep.
Yeah. So when we're fighting or arguing and one of us is like, wait a second, what are we doing? We literally say the words, same team. We're on the same team. We want the same things. What is going on? As a quick little sidebar, I did listen to this book called 30 Lessons of Living. You and I did not listen to this one, but it's the same author. So 30 Lessons of Living, a gerontologist wrote this book. He interviewed, quote unquote, experts of life, the elderly. And the elderly, he spoke to, let's say, 1,000 people who were old and asked them all these questions. And he categorized them by career, parenthood, marriage, etc. And in the marriage one of the themes that came out from these elderly was that when you and your spouse are in an argument and it seems like you both have your heels dug in, part of the coming together is to figure out which one is more passionate about the thing, for whatever reason that passion may be. And if you're more passionate about the thing, that's okay. Okay, we're same team. Okay, I stand down. I thought that was really powerful because a lot of times we want to prove to be right. And I think I won't say I think. I know that's what I fight for because I want to be right. And I know a lot of my clients argue, debate, fight to be right. But if we're on the same team and you feel more passionately about it, what's right is preserving the team, not my stance.
As long as it's not going to hurt the company or
100%.
right, unethically, of course.
100%. All right, one last story, please. I know I'm dominating here again for another minute.
We have like 15 minutes. You're good.
Okay. One of my biggest leadership successes was with Katie Strevey. And Strevey, if you're watching, I call it the Streves rule. We, in our kickoff meeting, like her first day, I can't remember how we exactly got there, but I had a story where I wish I would have said blah, 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 right? And she had a similar story. So we took that and said, okay, we're starting our relationship from scratch right now. How do we use this? So instead of us getting to the future, not having said something and then be like, well, shit, I was going to say. So we would literally say that. And we'd say, in the spirit of not saying, I should have said, and then we'd say the thing. And what it did for her is it allowed her to check in with me without her feeling like she was, quite frankly, micromanaging her manager. And the same was true for me. I could ask her the same questions without me seeming like I was all up in her business and micromanaging her. And it was wonderful. It was the best explicit agreement we started at the gates. And man, it set our relationship up it just set our relationship up for success from the beginning.
You were both in understanding.
Yes.
And I think even deeper is like you were in understanding of what that means, but you were in understanding that it was also safe. It was in the best interest, right? You clarified that and you cleared it all up, which I think that is high level leadership skills right there, right? Is all too often, well, not all too often. I just think people are really, really busy. People go really fast. They're really busy. There's in corporate America, a lot of, in everything, it's metrics driven. But good leadership slows down because they're not really in, well, I don't know if this is going to come out right, but they're not in the business of busy. They're in the business of people. So if you're busy doing, and you're not leading people, especially high potentials that are going to be coming up that you're going to be bringing with you and is going to be the next set of leadership. If you're not leading, if you're not slowing down to do some of these skills that we're talking about, life is going to be harder. Work is going to be harder. Your team is going to be dissent and disjointed teams. It's like when you go home, you walk in the door, and if you just start doing and controlling everything or avoiding, life is going to be harder. So taking these skill sets of clear agreements, understanding the emotions, right? Processing them through, communicating them. What does that mean? Looking at them as truth, looking at your team's emotions as their truth, having the same team philosophy, like the same team immediately diffuses. Unless we're really in it. And then I'm like, take your same team and stick it. I don't give a shit about the same team. But I quickly, my brain is quickly like, no. That's not how we operate. That's not what we're doing, right? It's an immediate diffuser of disagreements. These are all universal skill sets, right? So slow down to practice the human side of things, of developing the leadership, rather than being in the weeds of the doing. Because you're going to miss all this. And then you're going to go home, and what are you going to do? Complain, ruminate, not sleep well, drink a bottle of wine, eat crappy food, snap at your kids, maybe push your partner away, whatever thing. Then you get in a fight at home. Now you have exponential. You're stacking on the stress. You're stacking on the emotional load. Then you go home or you go to work the next day. And even if you're compartmentalizing it and you manage stress really well, you're just walking in this exuding this energetic ball of yuck, ick. People feel it and you feel it. Anything else on the same team philosophy?
There is something going through my brain. I'm thinking back to an old story where it was a mentor of mine. He was a senior executive at a Fortune 100 company, and he was telling me a story about how he and some of his colleagues and peers were talking about how sometimes they would treat the world outside of work the same way they treated inside of work. Meaning, these were senior executives where, in essence, they say to do and people do, whether it's direct reports, their EA, whoever. And if things weren't done to their liking, right, there are some consequences to that in the corporation, at the company. the story is that these people then were doing that outside of life. They go to a restaurant and start making demands. They would go home and expect their spouses or their children to treat them with the same level of deference that the company did. And right, think about that story. You know, I mean, I hate to say it, but right, some execs bark at their EA. They expect a lot. They bark at their direct reports. Then you come home to your partner, who for all intents and purposes really is supposed to be and hopefully is your best friend. And then you're barking at them too. Why isn't my dinner ready? Why is there shit everywhere? Why are the kids not bathed? Right. And this, I feel like this gets a little bit into some of your stories where some of the ladies that you've specifically coached who are spouses and moms, right? That second shift you talk about, right? Where some of these ladies are just expected to run the household with very little support, that it seems like an implicit agreement. Then they're not willing to speak up, which I know takes us a little bit off of the leadership side we're talking about, but there is carryover to both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not speaking. Yes, they don't speak up at home because it's uncomfortable, or they've had a negative experience with it, or there's been retaliation, or they've got long-standing generational modeling and beliefs. Like, fill in the blank of why we're not doing it. Okay. And by the way, I was one of them. Okay. So I say that with, I am with you in this. I did, well, I'm sure my ex-husband would disagree with this, but I felt like, let me reframe. I felt like I was the primary, and I had a full-time job. And if I did ask for support or share how I was feeling, there would be a retaliation. And so what do? Right? You self-protect. And so you stop sharing. Then you start doing more and more and more. Well, that, if I reflect back, I was doing that at work too. Right? I was, my clients, well, could you just do this for me real quick? When it was very clearly within their scope of work. Like, that is not something that I do. Or somebody, my assistant, she'd be like, can you just do this? It's just easier for you to make that call. So I would overfunction and I wouldn't speak up. I was the only woman in a sales team of, I think it was 12 men, in a construction, totally male dominated industry. And so I stopped speaking up at work. Well, what happened? I became resentful. I became unwell. I started, blaming work, blaming my teammates, started blaming my husband at the time. It's all on me. It's 100% on me. Yes, other people had influence, but I still had to own what I was creating for myself. So, what happens when, all right, let's talk about the recovery plan. I'll be honest, I don't know that we've totally mastered this.
It's the hardest, I mean, there's a really profound story in my brain, and hopefully I can articulate it well. So I was working with a new client, or I'm still working with her. We kicked off, I don't know, maybe 4 months ago. And as she was telling me this story, the story she was telling was a lot of questions of people. And the questions were pointed. And they were driving at a specific point. And the point she was driving at is, based upon the answers to my pointed questions, you're going to prove whether I can trust you or not. She never was direct about her intentions. She wasn't being clear about a variety of things, but she was asking questions to test your answer. When you answered incorrectly to suit her needs, now you're in her doghouse. And she treated you like you were in the doghouse, but she never told you you were in the doghouse. And then to your point, she never told you how to get out of it, which is the recovery. And the recovery, and I'll be transparent, this was something my therapist taught me last year, which is, yes, everyone is going to have fights, but how do you, quote unquote, recover to come back to norm or baseline? A lot of people have a fight, and maybe they've talked about it to some degree. Maybe they've scratched the surface of it. Maybe there was an apology, but there wasn't really the deepest of recovery. And then we just go right back. And what she was saying is, when you have that cycle of these fights with half-assed recovery, you never fully recover. And I do see this happen a lot through my clients, where there is some sort of rupture, which again is my therapist word, right? So there's a rupture to the relationship that doesn't have an adequate recovery. And recovery has its own play. The exploration of what were the actions, what was your interpretation of those actions? Quite frankly, how did they make you feel? There is ownership on my part in the play. There's true remorse, and then there's some coming back together. Now we're talking about partners at work. It's the same flow, the same process, maybe with some different words. But long-winded way to say is a lot of leaders I talk to and coach to and hear stories about, they don't have effective recovery, and they're not clear about how do you earn my trust, how do you erode it, and if you erode it, how do you regain it?
I think it's more than just trust, though. Right? No? Why are you looking at me like, what's going on?
I mean, are you asking me the question?
You're
I think
saying
you said
trust, and maybe
before.
maybe I'm being literal, but it's sometimes it's trust. Sometimes, it's hurt. Sometimes, I mean, think of our friend who was on the call with her senior leaders and that guy threw her under the bus. Complete blatant lie. And then his half-ass apology was something along the lines of, sorry I hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
Like totally flippant, total bullshit. And she's like, it's not about the feelings. It's about your action. Like what you legitimately tried to sabotage me for your own gains. Let's address that. But it's interesting what you say is I have not seen it, and we're just learning this as well. So let's be honest, right? We are not professionals, but we are learning to do this in the recovery, the repair process. It takes exponentially longer than the infraction itself.
The recovery.
The recovery.
Yeah.
Right? And you know how long it's going to take? Is as long as that person needs. So if you, right, want me to forgive you and you start getting antsy and itchy because I'm not forgiving you fast enough to make you comfortable, then you start getting pissed about that. Like, when you gonna get over this? I've heard that before. It's been a year. When you're gonna get over this?
That's not my words, by the way. Just
No.
clarify.
That's not your words. That's somebody else in my life with a major infraction. And so if you're the one who did the thing, right, the repair needs to happen, which is direct communication of how do we repair this? Oh, great. And then you, I believe, the person who caused the hurt, the harm, you got to just be patient and keep showing up and keep showing up and keep showing up until the other person believes and trusts that you genuinely have remorse. I think when you said that, I was like, that right there. You can't bullshit your way out of this. You can try, but it's not going to do the complete repair of the relationship. And this is, I think, probably the number one thing that individuals need to work on, because we're human. I know we're right at time. And there's going to be discord, right? That is a truth. The repair and the recovery is the piece of it that will be a game changer for you at home and at work. Any parting words?
On that point, a lot of my earlier self, and I see it in others, clients, friends, family, during the repair process, there's a pointedness of, well, you did this and you made me feel that, right? That's not repair.
That's not repair.
Yes, your actions might not have been appreciated. Your actions might have led me to feel a certain way. And yes, that does need to be addressed. But you me, you, listeners, leaders, etc. A repair is not, well, you did this thing and don't do it again. The repair is what is acceptable, what is unacceptable, what infractions were broken, what boundaries were crossed, what actions are we going to try to take, or what actions are we going to insist on taking to bring us back to a reasonable baseline. And quite frankly, there's also an element of, are we past a point of no return?
That's fair too.
That's also part of the gig.
Yeah, right. And that's a level of maturity to be able to look at the other person and say that. Is like foundation has crumbled, the house has fallen down. We could continue to destroy each other in this relationship, what little bit is left of it, or we need to call it quits. And that could be at home with marriage. And we do not advocate divorce. It's not what I'm saying. But you need to know when to be able to call it. And I know we're a minute over, but there was something there with that, yeah, you can't hold it against the person forever, right? It's your responsibility to do your own repair and your emotional healing and everything that comes with it, just as it is the other person, the offender's responsibility to do their own work. Okay. We don't get to keep abdicating our emotions to the other person. Manage your own shit, grow from it, learn from it, and don't hold each other. Don't continue to use it against each other. That is not repair. If that's what you're doing, you miss the whole point of this.
And there's got to be some form of forgiveness.
Yes, absolutely. So hopefully we were able to show you, the dog's barking, blending the two, home life and leadership, how you're showing up. I challenge everybody, right, to, do an audit, start an awareness and look, like, how am I speaking to my partner at home or my kids or my spouse? How am I showing up as a leader? Like you said, I retreat. I did that when I had my team too, working with my team of practitioners, right? I didn't want to confront them. I didn't want to hold them accountable. I just wanted to do like my mom does, ostrich, stick her head in the sand. And I had to work through that discomfort to be a better leader. So hopefully we're able to shine light on ways that you can grow in both areas because they will support each other. All right, we're not back here next Tuesday. We're off next Tuesday, but we'll see you in 2 Tuesdays.
All right. See you next time.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
All right.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.